Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to Duality with bobdub. I am bobdub, of course, and it is fantastic to be back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. It's so great. Those of you who are with us live is fantastic, and the rest of you who are joining us through the week, it is such an honor to have you with us. Thank you very, very much indeed for your support and your viewership and also for your questions. It is really great that we are having people who are beginning to challenge us on the things that we say. It's one of the really fun things about having online conversations is that, we can come here and we can have our thoughts, but when people come to us and challenge us and bring us other interesting things, that's when the whole thing really takes off. So I just wanted to just stop and thank you for your involvement and your commitment and everything. It is just great to have you with us. And with us again today is Roger, of course, from Roger Hanson Live. Hey, Roger, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you. How are things going in the middle of America there?
It's it's hectic. Everything's hectic. This, yeah. That's all I can say. It's just hectic.
Yep, seems like it. Seems like that's what life is about. And we have another special guest today. Last week we had Rush of Waves, and today we are very honored to have Chris DooGood from Minds.com back with us again. He will be joining us shortly, and we will introduce him in good time. So just until then, yeah, keep it in mind. It will be Chris DooGood. We call him Do Better. Um, I'm sure you will recognize that reference. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the duality of nature. If you do have any questions as we go along, do drop them in the comments and we will attempt to answer them as we go along. Otherwise, we will answer them next week. Oh, Reginald. Reginald has just decided to join me. And let me move him out the way before he steps on the speaker. Right, okay, so right, the duality of nature. All right, so Roger,
Yeah.
we've been talking about a lot about how these forces that we see, these oppositional forces that we see, are actually
hmm
something that works together. They work together to create one thing. And one of the things that I thought that was really interesting that we touched on last week was night and day, and how night and day isn't actually night and day. It's a product of the rotation of the earth. So there's this one holistic force that then causes two separate perceptions. What do you think of that? How do you think that that informs our opinion of duality?
Well, when I read up on that right there, that kind of got me interested because I've actually gotten involved with like gardening and planting stuff and everything. So I'm really big on plant life and growing stuff. And when it mentioned duality, it also uh, spoke about what the the duality of that was, and the rotation of the Earth. It creates the duality of day and night, like you said. Okay, but the cycle of day and night, it influences aspects of you know life here on Earth. That
Mm-hmm.
includes the climate, it includes photosynthesis from plants, and then animal behaviors, you know.
Yeah.
So, like, I know personally, like when I'm growing something, okay, like a plant needs the daylight in order to gather its nutrients, okay. But if people don't know much about planting, they also don't know the fact that plants need night just as much, if not more, because that's when they take and they all those nourishments, and that's when they actually start growing because they're
Mm.
feeding off of what they've gathered in the daytime,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, absolutely.
So,
And I think that's fascinating about people as well. I read an article a while back that was talking about learning, and it was just an example of some kids who'd been exposed to a bicycle and they'd sort of been, given their first wobbly lesson on a bicycle, and then they'd gone to sleep, and then the next day they were measured again and their performance on the bicycle, their ability to balance it, had increased significantly after they'd slept for the night. So it seems that there's this real important thing that happens to us during this sort of, well, what you would call negative space, I suppose, sleep time, the time that we're not here, even though we are here.
mhm.
Mm.
I've I've even I don't know how scientific it is or anything, but I've even heard like in the morning times when you wake up, you have a natural clock. And if you set that natural clock inside of your body to watch the sun go up every day, it'll
Mm.
literally train your mind,
Yeah,
you know.
that's
And
amazing.
that's
Yeah, I do that. The days that I don't tell myself to wake up at 6 o'clock are the days that I sleep till 7 or 8. The days that I say, okay, tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, I'm doing this and this, then 6 o'clock, I wake up, just boom, no alarm clock, nothing. Just, yeah, it's just an automatic clock in your head. Oh,
I think that stuff's pretty amazing. I was
amazing.
checking that out, and then like the behaviors of animals too.
Yes.
Like I know it's probably, I don't know if it's inappropriate or not, but like they like with women, with
Mm.
their
Monthly
you know
cycle.
monthly cycles. Yeah, there you go. See, you would be the one to know the proper way of
I knew
saying
the
that.
word, yes.
But I've heard that the moon influenced that, so that
100%.
that was something that really stuck
Hmm.
out to me on that when it comes to day and night too.
Absolutely. 28-day cycle. And the other weird thing is that if you have a whole lot of women living together in the same, um, like a nunnery or some sort of commune, they all become in sync and their cycle all syncs up and they have it at the same time. Isn't it bizarre?
Yeah, that is pretty bizarre.
Yeah. So another thing that I think about with life and death, I mean with night and day, is life and death. We have this
Hmm.
idea that life is when we're present and death is when we're gone. But if there is a correlation between night and day, which is the rotation of the earth, then it could be that there's some sort of correlation between life and death, and that we go into life and then into death and then into life and then into death.
Hmm. Well, when you look at life and death, though, okay, like every living organism, everything on this planet, it's born, and then it lives, and then it dies. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
the these are inseparable. I mean, that's just basically the law. You know what I mean? That's the way it is. You're born, you live,
Mm-hmm.
you die. There's no shortcuts. Uh, there's no freaking way of getting out of it. You know what I mean? That's
Mm,
what you do.
mm,
So
mm,
so they're inseparable. And that's just the way it is with it. When I seen that, that really blew my mind when I thought about it, because like that, and there's no conflict there. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
Like
Yes,
there's no conflict whatsoever in that situation. That's like 100% duality.
yes, yes. And yet, it's so so much harder for me to know that in my heart than it is to know that in my mind. Because my
Right.
my mom for the last couple of days she hasn't been well at all, and it's just she's 86, she's going to die. It's not like you can take her to the doctor and she's going to get better. And so there's this thing in me that says, no, it's completely wrong that she should be dying. And then there's this other thing in me that says, this is completely natural. This is how it works. So it's so odd to me that so many of these holistic things are things that we perceive as two things.
Well, I
Go
think
on.
that goes back to what we were talking about before with the duality and the dualism. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got that those two thoughts that are conflicting with one another. You know what I mean? That's like dualism right there. You
Yes.
know, like that would be like the whole mind over matter thing
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on inside of your head. You
Yeah.
know, like for me, I know that the rational thought is, yeah, you know, it's natural, it's, you know, it's balance and harmony and all that good stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
But in my heart, you know, I don't want to see any of my parents die or, you know, anything
Yeah.
like that. I don't want
Yeah.
that. So you
Yeah.
get that conflict that's going on inside of your mind.
Mm. Mm.
That's the way I see it. I
Yeah.
mean,
And I think that's really why we're doing this program and this show, is because those sort of things are very hard to deal with on your own. It's very difficult to have a mind that's divided against itself. And it does make you doubt yourself and be afraid, I suppose. Do you know, I heard this amazingly interesting thing the other day, and I have no idea how true it is, but just an amazing thing. The 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 command that occurs most often in the Bible is do not be afraid. Isn't it
mhm,
interesting? That's the main thing that these religious scholars who put together all these stories, that's the main message that they've been trying to get out is do not
mhm,
be afraid. It's like all these fearful things happen and all these like really difficult things. I mean, we live on this planet where we are basically the prey for every single predator that there is. And we have had to go to extraordinary lengths of grouping together into communities and building weapons and shelters and walls and everything to protect ourselves from predators of other species and of our own species who want to obliterate us. So, our whole world is about surviving and beating death, and yet death is the thing that comes for us all.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was like with what I was talking about in my notes, you know, the
Mm-hmm.
survival and evolution thing, you know, when you stop and you look at it, okay, there it's about predator and prey. When you talk about that, okay, there's a relationship between the predator and the prey as well. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Right.
And that goes with everybody and everything. Like yeah, we're at the top of the food chain, you know,
Yes.
but at the same time, um, there there's a predator and then there's the prey. You know what I mean? So you are in constant fear, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, you have to also remind yourself that these influence, you know, these are supposed to be good influences when it comes to survival and our evolution. You know what I mean? Because think about
Yes.
it: if there was no predator, then
Yes.
then things would become overpopulated, and we would have an overpopulation of things. So it's
Indeed.
kind of like um, it it helps balance out the environment that we're living in. You know what I mean? So,
Mm. Mm.
and even though you know that, you're still afraid, and like that right there in itself is kind of like dualism, I guess you could say, because there's that conflict in your mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you're not supposed to be afraid, but at the same time, you are afraid.
You are
You know what I
afraid.
mean?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Yes.
when I was a lot of this stuff is starting to make more sense to me because it's making me remember things that I heard when I first sobered up, like face everything and recover, or fuck everything and run. Those are your two options.
Wow.
You know, that's
Wow.
a that's a dualism or duality right there. You have one
Yes.
of two choices. You could face everything and recover, or you could
Mm.
fuck everything and run.
That is such
Um,
good advice. Gosh, that's such good advice. It's also really interesting because when you're in these dualities, you're living them. You don't often stop and think about them. Like you're talking about this face and recover or fuck and run. Like I always used to run away from things, but I didn't realize that in running away from the thing, I was fucking it up.
mhm.
It's been so interesting to me realizing that these dualities come in dualities. You know, you,
Well, I think it's the dualism is what that really is, though, because like you've got that fear
mm,
and then that faith going on. You have to have faith or you have to have fear. It's one or
yes,
the other.
yes,
You know what I mean?
yes,
So like, and that's a constant state of conflict right there. If you think about it, you're either, you have faith that something's going to work out, or
mm,
you're terrified that it's going to fail or
mm,
something's going to go wrong. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
yes, yes, exactly, yes.
You know.
Okay, well, before we go on further, I would like to now go back to introducing Chris DooGood. Chris has been a long-time friend of mine. He is one of the first people that I met on minds.com, and he invited me to join into a conference which was run by a woman who was talking about non-violent communication. And she was fascinating because she says there's two ways to communicate. You can communicate by having or by attempting to have power over the person that you are talking to, or you can communicate by attempting to have power with the person that you are talking to. And so that was one of the first things that Chris and I explored together. And later on, we started talking about his idea, which I find a fascinating idea, of all things are connected. And a couple of weeks back, when Do Better was on our show, he was mentioning his ideas of this connectedness of all things. So yeah, Do Better, I'm really interested in you coming along today and giving us some more of your perspective on connection, because I think it's really, really relevant in talking about duality to be able to understand the underlying connectedness and also the duality within connection. So welcome to you, Do Better.
Hey, hey, how's it going?
It is going very well. It is a gorgeous day
Hmm.
here. How is it going with you?
Not bad, not bad. Still kind of finishing my dinner. Got a little dessert,
Oh, very
but
nice. Two courses.
but
Duality of dinner.
yeah,
Uh,
main course and dessert.
so one of the times I first heard about your ideas about connection, Do Better, was when somebody was talking
Hmm.
about aliens. And you were saying there are no aliens, we are only one. So I was wondering if you
Yeah,
could maybe
well,
like jump in and give us a little bit of your perspective on the connectedness of all things.
well, I mean, it's something that I've learned through the process of just exploring our world and thinking about all the things, and then some books that I've read that led me on to that belief. Neil Donald Walsh being
Mm,
one, Marshall Rosenberg with the nonviolent communication. That's another. I mean, it's it's all about how we process it in our minds,
Hmm.
and then we experience it in our world.
Right. So why is it important to believe or to have this understanding of the connectedness of things? What does it bring to our perception?
um, Sorry, I was getting interrupted here. Can you repeat that?
Oh, I was just saying the idea of connection gives you a
Hmm.
new way to think about things and to look at the world. In your perspective, what do you think, viewing the whole of creation through this lens of connection, how do you think that it changes our attitude to the world?
Oh wow. Well, I mean, I was reading something that Yvette or Yvette
Hmm.
she sent out an email about the whole nonviolent communication. It reminds you about Marshall Rosenberg and how he saw the world and how he tried to help others see the world. And instead of seeing them as enemies, you see that they're just like you. They're having their internal uh, pains and worries and issues, and their needs aren't being met. And if you are able to see through the seeing a person as a them instead
Right.
of them, it's your brother,
Hmm.
your family.
And us.
Yeah, and then connect with that person to see what needs are not being met.
Mm. Mm.
And yeah, it can turn around years of neglect with one person.
Oh,
But
with one person taking the stance of understanding the connectedness between, say, the members of a family.
right.
Mm. What do you think about that,
Yeah.
Roger?
Well, right, what he's saying there too, I think the most important thing for people to understand too, like this isn't like a big subject either. Like it is about everybody being connected, but you have to deal with these kind of situations on a personal balance or level. You know what I mean? So there's that duality going on right there. Like you know what I mean? It's a face to face, person on person kind of relationship that you have to have. You know, you can't be one of those people that are running out trying to save 5 million people. You have to work one person at a time, you
Mm.
know.
Mm.
And
Right.
that's something that I've learned. Like it's a personal relationship that you have to have with people to do that.
Well, it's also changing the whole dynamic of the
Right.
power
Right.
situation. And
It's both going on at the same time.
and the more people that get to that level of understanding and can communicate from that aspect of connecting with each other, the sooner that we can turn this bullshit around.
Hmm.
But how do we get to that point faster is being that change.
Hmm. And when you say this bullshit, you're talking about
The
the division and the aggressiveness within society, are you?
indoctrination and power structure of power over and control, violence, all these, yeah,
Hmm.
all that we have kind of just allowed and kind of consented to unwillingly without our real not full knowledge of the ramifications of everything. We're like, this is the way things are. That's what we gotta do. And now that people are starting to look into it more and understand how we got here, it's poking a lot of holes in this society. And
Mhm.
it's time to kind of reassess where we want the direction of this whole thing to go. Because obviously, whoever's leading the way now is not leading us where we say we want to go.
It's very interesting to me how we are changing over from a mindset where we allow a certain group of people to dominate and control us to a mindset where we want all people to join together into vast networks to be able to contribute and regulate the society. I think that we're in an amazing melting pot in the time of history. How do you see it, Roger? I know that you're quite a buff on history and being able to see the big picture. Do you see us being at a sort of a turning point in history?
Yeah, I do, but what I see is kind of the direction that um, do better is talking about right there. But I see it more in a scientific approach because like a lot of people don't really get into like scientific method, but I geek out on things a lot, you know. And
Mhm.
there's one part about science that I really love, and what it says is it's I'm not like quoting it verbatim, okay? I'm just
Yeah,
kind of giving you a sense of what it's saying, but instead of trying to force an idea on people and their beliefs, what you do is you present them with the idea, okay? And when you present them with the idea, they're going to fight against it if it goes against their beliefs. But if that information that you provide to them is solid and they honestly freaking listen to you, then they're going to see how ridiculous their ideas are. And eventually they will come around on their own time, at their own time, on their own time limit. You know what I mean? It's not going to be forced upon them.
hmm,
And that's what I see happening here because you've got these forces who have these principles that are in conflict. They're fighting against one another, and neither side wants to give. You know what I'm saying? And it's constant conflict, and that's what's going on there. Now, what you want is for them to freaking kind of these opposing forces to freaking kind of work together and try to come up with solutions and everything. But you're not getting that because nobody wants balance and they don't want harmony and they don't want all that good stuff. They want their point of view to be recognized as the true point of view, and the other they're opposing, you know, group that they're against them. They don't want to hear them. They just want to fight against them. So you have that conflict going on. And there needs to be somebody that's there who's able to speak to them and say, look, this is the way things need to be, you know what I mean? And then when they start seeing that and they start freaking looking at their own uh, principles and their own way of thinking, then as time goes by, they'll say, hey, hold up, something's not right here. You know what I mean? But they have to do it on their own time.
mm.
Yeah, and that's the part that sucks because there's no timetables. I mean, there's no way you can measure how long that's going to take. It could take 10 years, it could take 20 years, it could take 50. We don't know,
Mm.
you
And
know.
there are definitely some ways of talking to people that have a better response, that the people can have a better response to you. There are ways that you can speak to somebody. Like, I know this. I'm quite abrupt with what I say. I'm like, this is the way it is, and this is how it is. And for me, that makes total sense. There's night and there's day, and that's it. Boom. But there's twilight as well, within the night and day, and that's something that I really overlook a lot of the time. And I think, Chris, when you introduced me to Yvette, that was the time that I realized that if you want to get your point of view across, you have to consider how you're saying it, that some things are easier for people to respond to.
Yeah, definitely. The way you deliver your message is key to how it is received. So that's why I'm not as out and open with these type of conversations, like doing it myself, having my own channel and everything, as far as the video content. But because I want to become more polished with my communication, so that I am not leaving anything up for interpretation. And part of that is possibly creating a whole new language. And there's people that have pretty much started doing that, and they're laying the foundation. Not saying that their language is going to be, what we have to use, but
Yes.
there's definitely something, getting stirred up in the pot that we're about to all start eating some good soup and maybe communicating a lot better to unfuck a bunch of deceitful, conniving, just corruption, abundant, just
Yeah.
ridiculousness.
Yes. Yes,
And
indeed.
having a language that is clear and concise and mathematically certifiable leaves no room for interpretation. You say what you mean, and you mean what you say. Now, that doesn't go to say that this way of communicating will die out. It's just like more for legal contracts and public message type things, stuff like that. When you're dealing with a public situation, you'll use this language, and maybe you'll have your own language when you're at home in the house, but with family and friends. But we got to have something that says what it means and means what it says, instead of having all these wiggle rooms that are leaving all these people to companies, corporations, governments, allowing them room to lie and deceit. Just yeah,
It's making me
that's what's got to happen.
Yeah, it's making me think of what Roger and I were speaking about at the beginning when we were talking about predator and prey, and how I'm listening to you and I'm listening to your ideas of taking steps in order to protect ourselves from the injustices that have occurred. And I'm thinking it again in terms of this duality between the weaker and the stronger. Often it looks as if the weak people get a bad deal. But you look at it from another point of view, and the weak people in some situations could be the strong people if they were empowered.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that is the case, because the power that the weak people right now have, that they aren't realizing and utilizing, eclipses all this power over structure. And as soon as we figure that out,
Mm.
like the whole ants movie scene where
Yes.
Hopper was talking about, oh, you're gonna let that one ant push us around? No, who cares? It's just one ant. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when the rest of them figure it out, it's gonna
Yes.
be the end of our food situation, end of our cattle. That's
Yes.
what we are, tax cattle. We're just making a bunch of money for them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so they can push us over the hill like lemmings.
True.
Yeah.
Tired of it. I'm tired of it.
Mm.
And I know a lot more people are, and the only way to do something about it is to learn to communicate better and help help bring about a way that is more and clear and concise
Mm.
form of communication.
Mm. How do you respond to that, Roger? Do you see a possibility of that happening?
I think for that to happen, people need to realize who it is that they need to reach out to, you know. Now you can do the dualism route, or you could do the duality route. Like for me, when I look at it like this, like don't go to the conflict. Okay, you need to look at the people who need to be talked to. You need to talk to the people who are the poor and the weak. You know, those are the ones who need to hear the message, because these people are sucked into this lifestyle, and they're not even
Yeah, for
aware
sure.
of what's going on. You know what I mean? It's like talk
Yep.
to them and let them understand that, hey, look, this is what's going on in your life. This is why you're having such a hard time, and this is, you know, because you have these predators that are out there that are preying on you. Now with dualism, you know, or duality, I should say, and it goes to the predator and the prey. You're always going to have predators. It doesn't matter. They're always going to be there. You know, the thing of it is you need to also understand that freaking the prey are there too. They're the ones that need to be talked to. You know what I mean? So that they can stop the predators from freaking knocking on their door.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
Yeah,
um,
the prey have to become the predators, basically.
you know, it's and it's hard to get people to understand that message. You know what I mean? They don't really want to hear that. They want to root for their hero. You know what I mean? Because their hero is going to save them from their problems. And the truth is we're going to save ourselves from our problems, maybe together, but we have to, it's something we have to do on an individual basis. I can't sit back and wait for somebody else to do the job for me, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I really
Be the
think that,
change.
yeah, I, I think that is one of the biggest problems in today's world, you know.
Mm-hmm. So, do better. How do you think we change? How do you think we come together? I mean, you talk about we're all joined, but in terms of what we're talking about now, we're not yet all joined. We have the potential to be all joined. We're all connected, maybe is a better word, but we're not yet. What do you
I
think
think
we need?
I think I think world projects like going to space to Mars, that's going to be something that helps get
Mm-hmm.
us there, because we're going to have a whole new landscape to be able to create a whole new way of doing things,
Mm-hmm.
and that could lead potentially lead to, who knows, like, wow, look at the way this is going over here, let's try to recreate it here, and then see little pockets growing to eventually we have a whole new system, and maybe it's led on love instead of hate and fear and all that.
Mm-hmm. The good of
corruption type
humanity.
shit. Yeah.
The good of humanity. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I want to take a little bit of a different direction now. And Roger, another thing that we wanted to touch on today, and I thought that you could maybe elaborate on it for us from a scientific point of view, is the concept of buoyancy, which is actually a fascinating way of thinking about our own power in the world. So maybe you can just give us a little bit of a sort of scientific background to what buoyancy is.
Okay. Well, do you mind if I kind of give a little background on why we're talking about this, though?
No,
Because,
absolutely. No.
okay. So
Yeah.
last week, after we did the episode, we had me, you, and Russell Waves were having a conversation, which really we should have been recording it because it was even awesome. That conversation was
Yeah.
like, and he started talking about bees, man, and like I was first he came in and he started talking about electricity, which was really cool, and then he started talking about bees. So I went on and I started doing some research because before we ended it, I said, well, I wonder what buoyancy, if it would have anything to do with duality, and I went on and did some research and found out it did. It was actually buoyancy when it comes to physics. Duality of buoyancy is the fundamental principle in physics. It's crucial for understanding various phenomena in nature and technology, such as like floating of ships and diving of submarines and stuff like that. So that's the one thing I found out about, and I was, I, I mean, I know like basically how water works when it comes to buoyancy and everything, and how weight determines if something sinks or if it floats. But it went on to explain a lot of it. Um, it says that in a sense, buoyancy exhibits a form of duality between the interplay of the weight of the object and the weight of the displaced fluid. So the weight of the object that you put in the water, if that weight is lighter, then the water will surround the rock and it will uh, it'll displace, or it'll add weight to the water, which will make it float. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now that is considered um, upward force, and it exerts in the fluid and it creates greater weight than what the object is. Now the opposite is negative buoyancy, and that's sinking. Okay, and that's the opposite of it. So if the object is heavier, it'll sink.
Mm-hmm.
And according to that, that's an aspect of duality, just like we were talking about hot balloons, or no, helium balloons. It would have the same setup when it comes to buoyancy as well, because of the weight of the helium versus the weight of oxygen. And there's a
Right.
duality there.
Mm-hmm. And I think
So,
that's a really fascinating example because we need both things, like you were saying about night and day. We need both the ability to float and the ability to sink for different tasks. It's not like one thing is better than another, or one way is good and the other way is bad. They just are. These, you can either go up or you can go down. Doesn't mean that it's right to go up or it's wrong to go down. It just is that you can go up or down. And I think that's the same thing with communication. Do better. What you're saying is there are two different ways that you can communicate. One where you can put people off or put them in their place or have authority over them, and one where you can include them and bring them in. It's almost as if the sinking and floating thing is a part of our interaction with other people, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure.
crazy cat.
Definitely different buoyancies on the
Let me
you
go
know,
and
the way a conversation goes.
Yeah, yeah. And
Some people
abilities.
some people the conversation just sinks, and some people it goes up.
Goes up. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, yeah.
And sometimes you want the conversation to sink. You want to use techniques that make a conversation go away.
Right.
So I think that one of the things for me with this investigation into duality is learning our power in being able to manipulate these, what we're calling forces. Do you agree with that,
Yeah.
Roger? Do you think that it's about personal empowerment?
When I was reading about buoyancy and everything, the one thing that really stuck out to me, I don't know if you guys know how to say this saying best, but it's the one where it was talking about being a reed in the wind.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember that? Have you ever heard that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I don't
Now,
recall the saying, but I've heard it somewhere.
would you like to say it? Because I probably mess it up, bobdub.
You say it, Roger,
You want me
because
to say it?
I do want you to say it. Yes.
Okay. Now you can be one of two things. You can be like a a tree which is stiff and it stays in place. Okay, but
Yes.
when the wind gets strong enough and time goes by, that wind will eventually knock that tree down, make it fall.
Yes.
Now you can either be a tree that's standing strong in the wind and eventually fall, or you can be like a reed where when the wind hits it, it bends,
It bends. Yes.
you know. So I kind of think about it like that. I think that you need to learn how to freaking bend, and be able to freaking change according to the situation that's happening, because everything changes. There's always change.
Mm.
And I think what it really is we get so caught up in our way of thinking that we forget that there's other people. You know what I mean? Like when it we were talking about this before too, like about um having free will. You know what I mean? Everybody thinks that they can have free will, but in reality, there isn't. When it comes to being around other people, you can't truly have free will because if you are around other people, you have to be able to communicate with them, and you have to
Yes.
be able to, not do and say everything that you want to do because those other people are going to want to do what they want to do, and they have to, and what they say, so you're
Yeah.
going to have to compromise basically, and that's not free will. Compromise is not free will.
Mm-hmm.
You
Oh,
know what I
really?
mean?
How do
No,
you
it's
how do you interpret free will? I thought free will meant the freedom to make your own decision.
well, okay, you go ahead and make a decision with somebody that you're in love with, and they don't agree with your decision.
But that's what free will is, isn't it? Free will is when you think that through and you realize that that person's not going to agree with you, so you decide to do something
No,
that,
that's a compromise.
yes, that's your
That's a
free will. That's your free will to compromise, isn't it? It's your choosing the attitude of compromising.
free will is me wanting to do what I want to do when I want to do it. You see what I
Really?
mean? I want to go down and I want to get a cheeseburger. I don't care who freaking has a problem with it.
Hmm.
That's that's what I'm gonna do. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Even though I got freaking a high blood pressure, my doctor is telling me I shouldn't freaking eat cheeseburgers, and I got a wife that's freaking upset with me because I keep eating junk food that I shouldn't be eating.
Yes.
It's not me. I'm just using it as an example. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
sure. Yes, sure.
But that's free will.
Hmm.
See, I'm exerting my will to do whatever I want to do.
But you could exert your will to do what the other person wants to do. You could
Right.
freely do that. You could just choose to not put yourself first.
Because you're taking the consideration of another person
Yes.
into you know what I'm saying? You're stepping out of yourself and you're allowing somebody else's feelings to freaking be more important than your own.
Mm.
Because what it comes down to is selfishness and selflessness.
Hmm.
Those are two things that oppose one another. You see what I
Mm.
mean? You can either do one or the other. You can't do both. You can't be selfish and selfless.
Mm.
So you have to make the choice.
That's so interesting. I'm going to disagree with you. I think that you can selfishly decide to do things for the other person. Let me explain what I mean. If I'm in a relationship and I know that my husband doesn't want me to leave my dirty underwear on the bed, for instance, I don't know where that came from, but there we go. Um,
Okay. That's horrible.
okay,
You just said that out loud on
I
live
I
stream.
think
that's
I
out
think
loud. Everybody.
I think I think all this goes back to the indoctrination and the way that we communicate as far as our desires. So we've been indoctrinated to desire that big cheeseburger with the heart attack waiting to happen, and
Right.
it's just because that mentality keeps us at a low level of vibration and all the things, whatever. But once we seek that higher level of being, we won't desire that
Hmm.
heart attack cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Yes, you see,
So
that's
yeah.
it. And the same thing, like if I want my husband to be happy with me, but I know that he's going to be unhappy with me if I put smelly socks on the bed, then if I choose to put smelly socks on the bed, then the consequence that I get will be my husband will be unhappy. So I could choose to do a different thing. Although I've so blown
Exactly.
this whole example by choosing something dumb. Cheeseburger would have been much better if I just stuck with cheeseburgers. Off in the reeds with Bob Dub.
But
Yeah.
really, it's mainly about the indoctrination and desire that keep us from a lot of
Mm,
harmonious and you know just better way of life.
mm. Like just doing what somebody else has told you instead of thinking it out for yourself and coming to something that's a better decision.
And it, it
Not
it all
so
goes
much
it all goes
that it would be more we would be thinking the right decisions because that would be our desire is to do what is the best for not only ourselves but for all of humanity.
Hmm.
and that's what he's talking about with remember how we were talking about the good mind?
Right, right,
Okay.
right.
And this is kind of what I'm was getting into earlier. This has to be on an individual situation. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm,
these are decisions that you have to make for yourself on an individual basis. It's
For
not
sure,
about
yeah.
everybody else. You know what I mean? You have to do it for yourself. You have to make these decisions. You know.
mm, mm.
So, I mean, I agree with that 100%. Like
Yeah.
it's you know, and the thing about selfishness is like you have to define what you believe selfish to be. You know, I mean, a lot of people believe that being selfish is like a human basic instinct, and being high-minded and having those that good mind is above the instinctual desires. You know what I mean?
Right. The
So
natural.
you've got to kind of figure all that out in your head and come up with an understanding for yourself. What do
Mm-hmm.
you think is basic instinctual desires, and what's higher
Mm.
thinking, what's higher emotions, what's higher, you know, what's the good mind?
Mm.
I wouldn't even say basic desires. I would say indoctrinated desires, because a lot of the things that we call normal are super abnormal. Like when I first took my first drink of alcohol, it was like, what in the fuck? I was I was freaked out. Like this is the good thing, and everybody like, yeah, it's good, go, yeah, drink it. And then eventually you acquire a taste for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with a lot of different things that you see in society now. It's become an acquired taste, and we've just shrugged it off like it's normal and it's a basic instinct. No, it's not. It's an indoctrinated bullshit instinct that is
Yeah,
keeping us from getting to our true instinct, which is to love each other, to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
it's taken away. It's
Hmm.
taking away more than what it's given. Like now, I've been joking around about it, and I've said it a lot of times, and people think it is funny, which it is, but it's also true. But like the first signs of civilization when it actually happened was also the same time that beer was invented. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's something you need to look at. Okay, people invented beer, and then there was civilization.
Oh boy.
Okay, now I mean that's messed up. It really is, but it is true. If you look at the history and you find out they started at the same time.
Do you know, when I was
See?
traveling around New Zealand, after a while I started realizing that the very first building you see when you drive into any town is the liquor store. It's right there.
Mhm.
So yeah, I that's it's still happening. Any town, I'm sure they put up the liquor store. Come to our town,
Well,
guys. We have booze. Yeah, I don't know.
mm-hmm,
So odd.
Here in the United States, a gallon of milk is more expensive than gas, but you know what? Beer is still cheaper than both.
Wow. Priorities, hey?
mm-hmm.
Priorities.
Hmm.
It's
It's
That's
amazing.
amazing.
crazy. It's
It
crazy
is.
to think about. Wow.
It is crazy to think about. Wow, so many of these things that we are thinking about are actually really crazy to think about. The two shall be one and the one are two, and yeah. So unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time again for today. But to end off, maybe Do Better and Roger, you can just give us a final thoughts. Start with you, Do Better. End thought for today.
End thought for today.
Yeah.
Try to love each other and communicate better. It's gonna lead to more harmonious living, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
How cool. Thank you. And Roger?
Well, the best I can say about all of this stuff is, it's always good to be like do better's first conversation with you that you mentioned with the woman, because instead of trying to be in control and be the boss, try to cooperate with one another and come up with a solution together, because that's really the easiest way of doing it. All these opposing forces are just causing friction and chaos, and it's not going anywhere. It's just escalating. So, you know, there's always a better way of doing something if you work together instead of fighting against one another. And bees are cool too, by the way. I just wanted to
Bees.
say that.
Bees are cool. Bees are cool. And we will probably be talking about bees in depth on an upcoming show because Rush has said that he would come back. We are also very honored to be going to be joined shortly by Mark Edworthy, who is, well, you'll have, if you follow Roger, you will know that he is an expert on a great many things and also very involved in minds.com. So we have some really interesting discussions that are going to be coming up in the future. So thank you very much for being with us again today. Thank you for all of you who tune in and who take in what we say. It's really great. As I said at the beginning, we're really, really honored to have you with us. And final message for today is love each other. Until next week. See you then. Goodbye.